What is going on, everybody? You are back on another edition of Ballin Over Beers. This is the DFS show. Make sure you're checking out the betting show that we have out as well. I'm joined, as always, by my guy, James Fitch, AK Howe. Make sure before we bring these guys in here, though, you're smashing the like button, you're subscribing to the channel, and in the comments below, leave us who is your favorite stack of the week, because we're going to be discussing those things right now. Fellas, what's up? James, how you doing, bud?
Good, man. We were just talking about this. I'm trying to build a Chiefs super stack lineup, and it is tough, as per usual.
Pricing, yeah. I'll tell you what, DK from week one basically has made it very difficult for some of these builds, but AK, what's up, dude?
Oh, not much. Unlike James, I'm getting ready for showdown tomorrow night with the best team in football playing. There's
Jags?
my football. The Bengals are on. Just getting all excited for that.
Yeah, that should be a real ugly game. I'm actually glad I'm coaching tomorrow night, so I don't have to watch that shit show. No, I'm actually disappointed I won't see it. I just, love football. Any way we can get it. Let's talk a little bit first about last week. I think last week was an interesting week. Some things I loved the Lamar stack. Again, Lamar and Hollywood Brown going against that Detroit defense with the Deandre Swift bring back. I did it with that and a Hawkinson bring back, and Swift did well. Lamar probably threw the ball as well as he's thrown it in a while, and Hollywood Brown let us down by dropping like 2 or 3 touchdowns. So, that's kind of the way it goes. I don't think it was a terrible choice, but man, that definitely hurt. And I definitely didn't expect it to be low scoring like it was. It's weird. It's funny. People mock, and me included, we've mocked Dan Campbell. But man, he's got that line team. They play hard, man. They kind of hang around. They just hang around against teams,
Yeah, he's a better coach than I kind of mocked the pick at first, and I think a lot of people did. And I think to your point, Justin, they seem to want to play for him. Yeah. They responded to him. They play tough. They don't have a lot of talent on that team. It's not a deep roster, but I think the players that they have, I mean, if they can avoid injuries, they'll stay competitive in a lot of games.
No question. AK, any thoughts about the DFS week? Anybody stand out to you, good or bad wise?
I liked the Viking stack last week. I know I wasn't on, but they did pretty well for me with Cousins and Jefferson with the bring back of Metcalf. But I always like the Viking stacks. I always think you can get Kirk Cousins pretty cheaper than he should be, and he's usually pretty low owned as well.
Yeah, he's in another interesting game this week with Cleveland. It's got a pretty high point total. Both teams pretty good offenses. Both teams really kind of a concentrated offense too. So that'll be definitely a game of interest this week for a lot of people. But we'll get there. Let's start right and jump right in, and we're going to start with quarterbacks. And right up top, you got Patrick Mahomes at $8,100 going against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then the only other quarterback above 8,000 is Josh Allen. James, I'll start with you. Do you have, I know you said you're building, trying to build a super stack with Mahomes. Is that an interest for you? Is that a priority for you this week?
It wasn't until I just tried it. I put together a lineup that I don't hate. I don't know if I'm going to go with it. I've also been looking at some Josh Allen lineups. I think he's due for just a big breakout game against a very bad Texans team. So running it with Allen and Diggs, I think is appealing to me. I do want to try to make this Chiefs super stack work. So I may play around a little bit more though too.
Yeah, those are the two teams with the two highest implied team totals. We have the Bills at 31.5, just massive favorites, 16-point favorites over the Houston Texans, and then the Chiefs have a 30.5 implied point total with a 7-point favorite over Philadelphia. Generally speaking, it's the teams that have the high point totals, implied point totals. Their quarterbacks are the ones that perform, and right there you can see it reflected in the pricing in the 8,100. in the $8,000. AK, do you have interest in either of these guys, or are you going to look to build elsewhere?
I'm generally going to look to build elsewhere. It's just so expensive to stack them. And then even with like Allen, I know Diggs is cheaper than I think he should be, but that's a lot of your cash right there with just spending it on Mahomes or Allen.
Yeah, it is definitely an expensive stack for sure. If you keep going down in pricing, Kyla Murray's next with 7,800, and he seems to be somebody that is very difficult to get away from on a week-to-week basis, just because he provides so much rushing upside, so much touchdown equity, and the price reflects that every week. But man, it's tough to get away from him. Then Lamar Jackson at 7,500, Russ at 71, Stafford at 7,000. And that is every quarterback above $7,000 all the way up to Mahomes at 8,100. Some interesting games in there. Arizona and Los Angeles is another super high point total game. It's actually the highest on the entire slate at 55 points. Arizona is the dog in that one. They're getting +4. So Arizona's implied, or excuse me, the Rams implied total is 29.5. So they have a huge total. Stafford is up there, and he's another one. He's been balling. AK, I know he's your boy. You got interested in Stafford this week or what?
I have a little interest in him. I like the Ram stacks. The receivers you can get actually at a fairly reasonable price. So Stafford does have interest, and I know it's not the betting show, but all summer I was pumping Stafford MVP bets. So I'm kind of liking that right now, and Stafford in best ball. But
Absolutely. Cooper Kupp's been an absolute tear, James. You looking to go back to the well with a little Stafford Kupp stack here?
I don't initially have plans to touch that game. It's hard for me to invest in kind of the pocket passers at this price when you don't have that rushing upside. And the issue I have with Kyler in DFS is their offense is not very concentrated. So
Right.
I think every week you're trying to pick, if you're trying to like double stack it, I guess the obvious choice is stacking with Hopkins. He had a down game. He's battling injury. And he's going to have to deal with Jalen Ramsey this week. We talked about that on our betting show. You don't know who the next guy up is. One week it's Rondale Moore. The next week it's Christian. It's been Christian Kirk every week, I feel like. And then you got AJ Green that's been having 100-yard games the last 2 weeks. So it's tough to pick who to stack it with. So I guess if I were to attack that game, I may go with Stafford in the Kupp or Woods, and then try to guess which Cardinals player to bring it back with. I just think it's tough to really pick and choose there.
Yeah, I'm right there, right there with you on that. It is definitely difficult. I do like that. I do like Stafford though. I think that they're just going to continue to let him chuck it. It's just McVay's got his toy and he loves him. So we'll see what happens there. If you keep going down in pricing, Jalen Hurts, $6,900 going against the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense has been abysmal. I feel like he's going to gain some interest in that game with a pretty high point total, and then you go all the way down to Sam Darnold at 6,000. The name that's in there though, James, that I think everybody's going to be interested in is Dak Prescott at $6,700, and it's really, when you look at him, it's tough to get away from him.
He's in my cash lineup. I think I'm gonna go back to the well. I played him in my cash lineup in week 2, and that's the only week so far that I haven't won all of my double ups. Was when I played him against the Chargers, and that game just fell flat for everyone. So I'm a little nervous about that. But I think again the Cowboys are underpriced. They priced this game before the Monday night game came out. So they're kind of at a liability, I think, with these. But I love Dak in cash games. I think he's going to be highly owned in tournaments, though.
Yep, I agree with you in that sense. AK, what about you in this $6,000 range? Is Dak the guy for you as well, or are you going to go somewhere else?
I actually like the very first person you mentioned and the last with Jalen as a bring back kind of in the Chiefs. I think at 6,900, that allows you to play like Hill and Kelsey, even if you just play Jalen naked. His rushing upside gives you that floor. and he has so many targets. It's kind of hard to pick and choose which one. And I really don't think any of his targets are going to be someone that could go for $120 and a touchdown or two. So playing him naked is, I think, the safest spot for the Eagles. And then Sam Darnold at 6,000. They get a whole extra couple days to prepare since they played on last Thursday. Get that offense going without CMC. You might see a little more DJ Moore mixed in there. Terrence Marshall, Robbie Anderson. You got all them weapons. I just think at 6,000, you got a pretty good quarterback at a cheap price.
Yeah, that is certainly an interesting one for sure. You talk about Jalen Hurts, and we talked about how that Chiefs Philadelphia game is a high scoring one. It's got a 54 over under on it, so it's the second highest on the entire slate. And then you look at, last game versus the Cowboys, where the Cowboys just jumped on them so early. Hurts ended up having 39 pass attempts. He had 325 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ended up having 9 rushes, which, he hasn't had a game below 7 rushes yet this season. The Chiefs are 7-point favorites. So if they're down again, Hurts could be a guy that, again, he's either throwing it or he's running around, So either way, it's a good opportunity to generate a bunch of fantasy points. So,
you've got me thinking about that one for sure.
Yeah, and it's a way too, like you mentioned, AK, that if you take Hurts and then you end up stacking Hill and Kelsey coming back, you're saving $1,200 at the quarterback position. That's a pretty interesting and interesting take, I think, right there. So
I think one thing to think on that too is guys like Hurts, and we saw this last week with Fields. I think you saw a lot of people play Fields naked because those rushing quarterbacks like that don't necessarily have they don't have their Kelseys or their Hills. They can reach their ceiling without you feeling like you have to stack, right? Because if they're reaching their ceiling, there aren't many guys on the Eagles that are really going to help him get there, like maybe Devontae Smith. But as we saw last week, he was throwing touchdown passes to Greg Ward, and nobody's playing those guys really. So he can reach his ceiling without you feeling like you have to stack around him. And then you can get exposure to Hill and Kelsey. So I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one that I'm going to look pretty hard at for sure. Anything below that $6,000 range for either of you guys? Because I got one, and I teased this on the betting show. So I'm going to start with you. and I don't think either of you are going to want to hear it, but
I'm just going to put you on mute for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, where's Tony Reale when we need him?
Your guys' ears are going to bleed when you hear this, but I think I got some interest in Jimmy G this week at $5,600.
Is he lighting money on fire?
Listen. I don't, but this is why. So 51.5 over under. They're playing Seattle. Okay. 3-point favorites. 27.25 implied team total. Seattle has the 27th ranked pass defense per DVOA. San Francisco has the 11th ranked pass offense per DVOA. You can stack them really cheap with guys like George Kittle, who is $5,900 coming off of a 9-target game. Guys like Brandon Ayuk at $5,000, who is starting to get more in the offense, coming off a 6-target game. Deebo Samuel, $6,500, who's been having an awesome year, 12, 8, and 10 targets. So you can get him pretty cheap, and it allows you to bring back like a DK Metcalf or a Tyler Lockett, who are more expensive, $7,100, $7,200, against a banged up San Francisco secondary.
I think you bring up valid points, and I think this is a game that I'm going to stack, but I'm probably going to go with Wilson. But I think this could be a shootout. The concern I have with Garoppolo and where you're going to tilt, Justin, is when they're driving and Trey Lance comes in and runs the ball in or throws a touchdown pass, because that's what Shanahan does.
Yeah, no, for sure. They ran that little, 3-by-1 set. They motion the receiver across, and Lance just takes it and goes around the end. And Trent Williams killed some cornerback against Green Bay, and it's a walk-in touchdown for Lance.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand that for sure. But this game, that is such a sneaky way to get access to those expensive Seattle receivers. And it also gives you access to a guy like, we haven't got there yet, but like Derrick Henry. If you want to play Derrick Henry at 8,800 against the Jets, that stack unlocks a ton of salary for you if you want to get that crazy. I don't know if I could. I want to do it just because I feel like there is some merit to it. But man, it is one of those things that it's really tough to swallow, tough to stomach. So there was my pitch for Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm sorry everybody had to sit through that. We can move on. But does anybody else have any other cheap options, or are we going to stick to 6,000 and above guys?
Yeah, I don't see myself playing anybody below that.
Yeah, I'm not playing anyone below Sam Darnold.
Okay. Sign you guys up for Jimmy Garoppolo. Here we go. All right, let's move to running back. Derrick Henry, who I just mentioned, $8,800 going against the Jets. Christian McCaffrey was $8,700, but he is out. And then you got Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is banged up. We saw Alexander Madison play last week, who was awesome. So those are your guys above 8,000. It's crazy right now, the amount of touches Alvin Kamara is getting. Like, it's just absurd. He had 24 carries last game, another 4 targets. You know, the first game he had 20 carries with 4 targets. So every single week he is getting a ton of targets against this terrible this terrible Giants defense. So there's definitely interest in there, and there's definitely interest in Henry just because it's the Jets, right? But can you afford to get there, really?
He's in
Jimmy G.
Yeah, let's go, AK. Now you get it.
He's in a lineup I constructed that I'm probably going to play in my cash games with Dak at quarterback. I think you get good savings with Dak at 67, and you can play Henry, and I feel pretty good about the lineup. I mean, there are a couple punt plays in that lineup, but I kind of tend to take a stars and scrubs approach when I build cash lineups. So he's definitely a guy I want in there. My only concern with Henry this week is, we talked about this too on our betting show. AJ Brown and Julio Jones are both banged up. They didn't practice today. Their status for the weekend is uncertain right now. But if both of those guys are out, it will allow, I think, the Jets to kind of stack the box a little bit more. I don't really know if that's going to even mean anything for the Jets against Derrick Henry. I still think he's going to have a great game, but I like him in cash. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get him in tournament lineups.
That's fair. AK, you got any interest in these guys above 8,000?
I like both Kamara and Henry. Kamara's a tad bit cheaper, but he's getting the volume. And I'm not really too concerned about the Jets stacking the box. Derrick Henry's been facing 8-9-man boxes his whole career, and they're the Jets. So not really too concerned about that. I like both those guys, though.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's talk the price range right below that. It starts with $7,700 Aaron Jones, and it's a very short $7,000 range, because the only other guy in the 7,000 goes all the way down to 7,000 even with Nick Chubb. Then you got guys like Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, Alexander Madison at 6,600. If Dalvin Cook is out again, that is a high point total game. That could be very interesting. Zeke Elliott 65, Miles Sanders 64. All the way down to Kareem Hunt at 6,000. James, who is your preference in this $6,000 range, if you have one?
If you're looking at all the way up to 7, I like Nick Chubb if I'm looking to get access to that Cleveland Minnesota game instead of going with a guy like Dalvin or Madison. I really like Chubb. I think 7,000 is a good price for him. I feel sick kind of saying this, but I just feel like nobody's going to be playing Miles Sanders this week. And I think that Kansas City is supposed to be kind of a run funnel defense. We didn't really see it much with Eckler last week. He did better receiving. And I think Sanders is a good receiving back, so he can certainly earn some catches out of the backfield. So I like him. I should probably be higher on Zeke than I am. Justin, I think you're probably going to talk me into him. But if I'm going to stack the Chiefs game, I do like Sanders as kind of a bring back there.
AK, what about you in this range?
I like Zeke a lot in this range. I think he showed what he could do on Monday Night Football. The only thing that bothers me is how good Tony Pollard is, but I don't think Mike McCarthy, that was a struggle.
His name's not worth remembering.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
So he's
Legit.
I just don't think he's gonna be someone that's gonna spell Zeke too much. So I'm not overly concerned, but I do love Tony Pollard.
Yeah, Zeke, I do have interest in quite a bit. The only thing that scares me is the Carolina run defense is actually very good this year, or it has been good this year. But I think that they showed that they wanted to get Zeke going. The Eagles' front is pretty decent. Their defense in general is not very good, but their front is pretty decent, and they still had a ton of success against him. I think he had like 17 carries for almost 100 yards, just barely missed the bonus. So I definitely have interest there. What about Deandre Swift at 6,200? What is James? Do you have any interest in there? He's a guy that he gets a ton of targets, 11, 5, and 7 in his last 3 games. He also had 14 carries last week, so he's getting a pretty decent amount of volume at this price point at $6,200.
Yeah, I want to work him into some lineups. I think the price is good. He's a PPR stud all of a sudden this year with a new coaching staff. And what's his face? The coach, drawing a blank. Dan Campbell came out and said today that they are looking to get him more involved in the offense than he already is. So could just be coach speak, but all good signs. So I think he's a great play.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I like him quite a bit. Going down into this next range, I think one of the biggest decisions all week that people are going to have to make is what do you do with Chuba Hubbard, right? So he takes over and he's going to be in that full-time role for Christian McCaffrey. Now, I don't think he'll get every single rep. They have Royce Freeman there. So, I guess the decision that really comes down to is do you think that he is going to get, 60, 70, 80, what percentage of CMC's role is he going to get? If he gets 70% of it at $5,900, that seems pretty enticing right there in a high scoring game where, he could catch 6, 7, 8 passes and he's an explosive athlete, really good track guy, really, with his speed. So in this $5,000 to $5,900 range, AK, do you have any preference for anybody in here? Is it Chuba Hubbard or is it somebody else?
I'm going to fade Chuba Hubbard, just hoping that a lot of people play him because he's so cheap and hopefully gain, on the field that way. But I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 5,400. I think one of these weeks the Chiefs are going to get him going and he's not going to fumble. And I also like Jamal Williams. I know that they talked about wanting to get Swift going, but I think Williams has such a good floor for you with his receptions that at 52 or 5,300, that it's a good price point and it's a pretty safe play for you.
Yeah, he's at 5,300. Definitely a guy that they've had involved. He had 12 carries again last week too. So, James, what about you in this range? Are you on Chuba Hubbard or you looking elsewhere?
No, if I'm in that price range, I'd rather find a way to spend an extra $100 and play Kareem Hunt at 6. But I'm going to fade Chuba this week. I think AK is heading on the right path. I think he's going to be highly owned, and I just don't see him putting up the numbers for me. So I'm going to pass there. Not really anybody else in that range. I guess I'll throw out Zach Moss at 53. I know the Buffalo backfield has historically been not great the last couple of years, but I think last week was encouraging. We saw him get involved in both the run and pass game, and him catching passes. I think is key at 5,300. I don't think it's a terrible play if you're looking to get exposure to the Buffalo offense against the Texans. And I think the game script is going to be set up for potentially a lot of running for Buffalo in the second half, and that could be Moss. So I don't hate that play.
Yeah. Moss, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. Pretty interesting for a guy who's in a high scoring offense to get some of that goal line work like we've seen him getting, whether it be passing or catching. So that is an interesting call there. I'm kind of with you on AK on CEH again. I loved him at 4,800 last week, and he definitely paid off his price. 17 carries, 100 yards, caught a touchdown on a screen. he continues to be the number one guy in the offense. And there was a little shift in Kansas City's offense this past week. They did a lot less wide zone and they did more interior type run, which Clyde excelled at LSU. They ran a lot of duo, which is a gap scheme, just double teams. But he's very good at finding the inside run stuff. He's not fast, but he's extremely quick and has great vision. So if they continue to do that, and he's going to get 13 plus carries a game, I think that's a fair price point for him. Now he has to score touchdowns, and you'd love to see him get more involved in the pass game. But I think at $5,400 again in a game where they could be scoring a lot of points, I think that's pretty decent and pretty fair.
Is he a guy that you stack with Kansas City with Mahomes and maybe a Kelsey or a Hill, or is he more of a standalone play?
I played him in a standalone last week at his price tag at 4,800. I think you can play him with Mahomes. I don't think that hurts you by any stretch of the imagination. If they do that, like, to me, if you're stacking them, it makes more sense to do it with like a Kelsey, because a lot of the times those guys will do it together. You saw it last week. If those guys are getting a ton of work, it's because they're taking away the deep shots. They're taking a lot of attention and putting it on Tyreek Hill and doubling him. So a lot of the underneath stuff, a lot of the run game is open. So if you're going to stack, that makes a little bit more sense to me if you do it with Kelsey compared to Hill. Is there any cheapies below 5,000 that we're interested in at all? Royce Freeman, $4,700. Anybody down here that you have interest in, James?
Javonte Williams at 5,000 is probably the lowest I'm going to dive this week.
Okay. Actually, AK, before I guess 5,000, same price there. You have any thoughts on Trey Sermon, AK? Because Elijah Mitchell went out of that game with a hurt shoulder, so we don't really know what his status is. At $5,000, if Sermon is going to be the main guy there in San Francisco, is that any interest to you? 5,000 seems pretty cheap if he's the guy.
I thought he was going to be the guy last week, and they used the fullback there.
Kyle Juszczyk. I did see that they were giving him carries.
I mean,
I wouldn't touch Trey Sermon.
I'm not touching Trey Sermon this week, even at 5,000. I think the risk reward is not really worth it.
All right. Any other cheapies down there, AK, for you, or is that pretty much it?
That's pretty much it for me. The cheap running backs are pretty scary. Possibly Cordell Patterson. He's getting 15 touches a week between rushes and receiving. If you need to bomb someone, he's a athletic guy that's cheaper, but I'm staying away from guys under 5,000.
Interesting. Yeah. The only one that down here that I would say maybe would be Kenny Gainwell at 4,300. His roles just keep getting reduced though, so I don't think you can even do that. But he's on the Eagles against the Chiefs run defense that we've seen be pretty bad the past few weeks. But I don't even know if that's even worth it at all. That would be a complete total pump play if you're trying to have a really expensive stack or something. Let's move on to wide receivers. Tyreek Hill, most expensive at 8,000. He's the only one up there. And then you have from 7,000 up to 7,900. Calvin Ridley, you got both the Seattle guys in there, both, Cooper Kupp, who's been tearing it up, Devontae Adams, who's been tearing it up, and then guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who's been banged up, Diggs, who's struggled a little bit, and then Justin Jefferson. James, I'll start right with you. 7,000 up. Who's your favorite play in there?
Oh, man. I think I'm gonna go with DK Metcalf. I like guys like Hill and Adams. I'm gonna work those two guys into some stacks probably, but I think DK Metcalf at 7,200. I think you get kind of a balance of a discount in a game that I think could be a shootout, could be a high scoring game, and he, between him and Lockett, DK is the one that has been getting the targets. Lockett's been getting the touchdowns, but his targets per game are pretty low. So weighing kind of price and value and game script, I think DK is one of my favorites this week. Yeah,
I love that. I love that DK calling my Jimmy Garoppolo stacks. AK, who you got any preference in the $7,000 above range?
I like Diggs a lot this week.
Okay.
I think there's the Texans. They might be force feeding him the ball, get him a big game to get that, connection with Allen back at it. So I could see him having a huge game and then not being under 8,000 again the rest of the year.
Yeah, I really wonder if teams are starting to give the Bills and Allen the Mahomes and Chiefs treatment where they're just putting everybody and saying you're not going to get any big plays over the top with us. You're going to have to put 10 play drives together and score if you want to score, and that's why you kind of see he's getting targets, but he's getting 60 yards a game, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they come out this week and do that. If you keep going down, you get Terry McLaurin starts off the $6,000 range at $6,900, and that goes all the way down to Amari Cooper at $6,000. And James, I know this was like the first text you sent out when you saw the pricing was these Cowboy guys are just too cheap.
Yeah, I think again, I mentioned on the other show, our betting show, they put out I don't know why they do this, but they get their pricing out Monday afternoon. So
Yeah.
it was before the Cowboys played on Monday night. So you're getting a bit of a discount on the Cowboys, which means they're probably going to be, I would say, fairly highly owned. And with the Cowboys, it's the same situation with the Vikings, and it's the same situation with the Seahawks, where you're deciding between Cooper and Lamb every week, unless you're going to double stack them. But I don't think you can go wrong with either of those Cowboys receivers this week.
No, I'm right there with you. AK in that game, I also like DJ Moore on the other side of that. I know you had a little bit of interest in Sam Darnold. Does he do anything for you this week?
Yeah, I love DJ Moore this week. Worried about him against Diggs, but I don't know if Diggs is going to be following him all game. But I just think at 6,600, and then you can partner him up with the Lamb and the Cooper at $12,000 for 12,600 for Moore and Cooper in a possible shootout game. I feel like you'll have a huge leg up on the rest of the field there.
Yeah, 8, 11, and 12 targets in the first 3 games for DJ Moore. And if you watched that last game, man, Darnold, he just looks for him all the time, doesn't he?
Do you think?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're probably going to get to this price range, but while we're kind of talking about that matchup, I mean, Robbie Anderson, I think he's priced at like 5,100 this week. He's got to be a good tournament play, right? Nobody's looking to play him. I think Matt Rule came out and said last week, like, we need to get him more involved in the offense. And my thought process here is, without Christian McCaffrey, who, when he's in the lineup, a lot of the offense, the game planning is just focused around him. Without him, I just feel like they're going to look to pass the ball a little bit more, especially against a team that may put up points and may press them to do so. So I think Robbie Anderson's a guy that I want to look at for tournaments this week.
He is interesting, but the thing that's starting to scare me even with that is they say that, but then like you look at the game, this last game that the Panthers had, and it seemed like Terrace Marshall was on the field, more than Robbie Anderson was against Houston on that Thursday night game. I want to play Rob, and the thing with him is that it's going to take like one catch, right? Like at his price, he could literally have one catch for 80 yards and a touchdown, and all of a sudden now he's 3x his price. Yeah. So I do like it though, like you said, for like a GPP in a big play tournament, like at his price tag with his explosive upside, no CMC. It is in a matchup that is going to be high scoring, that they're probably going to throw the ball a lot. Like I'm right there with you. I think he is a smart play.
Well, if we're just talking about this game, we might as well just talk about Terence Marshall Jr. and Cedric Wilson at 4,000. I think last week Wilson performed. He had the targets. I mean, he got the touchdown, what helps. But in pass-happy offenses like the Cowboys, I think are going to have again this week, getting a number 3 receiver at 4,000, I think is a real good price. And like you said, Justin, about Marshall, seems like he's on the field more than Robbie Anderson. So is he sneakily becoming a number 2 that's drastically underpriced? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, no question. And in this game, and obviously it's a game that a lot of people are going to be looking at because of this Cowboys offense. But the thing we always talk about is, all of a sudden it's a Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin week, and like it was the last one. Schultz is catching touchdowns. It's like, it makes it really difficult for you to find out if it's going to be a Schultz or if it's going to be Cedric Wilson, or where's the next play going to be? Is it be Tony Pollard? It does give you a little bit of pause for this offense because they spread it around so much.
Yeah, I'd stay away from Cedric Wilson. If choosing at that price point, I think Terrence Marshall will be the pick I go to.
I like that call. I think that's probably what I would do too. If you keep going down in price, well, let me find I know I made a note here. I don't want to skip over him if he's in this price already. So yeah, in this price range, Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton is $5,700. He's going up against Baltimore. Baltimore's pass defense has not been great. Jerry Jeudy is out. KJ Hamler's out. I think that you saw he's starting to come, into his own a little bit more. I think Cortland Sutton could be up for a huge week at his price tag, so I like him quite a bit there. If you go down to the next range, all the way down, even $5,000, if you want to include that, Brandon Ayuk, I talked about him a little bit with the Jimmy Garoppolo stack that I like. But any cheapies below $5,000, James?
Low 5. I'm going all the way down, and this is a play that I like in both cash and tournament. And with cash, that's because I'm spending up on guys like Derrick Henry, and in tournaments, it's really just kind of a dart throw. But we talked about him on our betting show. Nick Westbrook Akine, however the hell you pronounce that, at 3,200, especially if either both or one of AJ Brown and Julio Jones are out. 5 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown last week. He did have a fumble, so that could limit kind of some of his playing time, but I think he's a pretty good dart throw at 3,200.
AK, what about you?
I like to quiz Watkins, possibly in the Kansas City Philly game at 3,500. High scoring game. Jalen really doesn't have a true number one besides Devontae Smith, I guess, is his number one, but you never know what could happen in the Eagles for 3,500 in a high scoring game. That's worth a punt on a GPP.
Yeah. What about Donovan Peoples-Jones at $3,200? Jarvis Landry is out. This Cleveland Minnesota game is one that we kind of talked about. Going to be super high scoring, 51.5 over under on that. 26.75 implied total for Cleveland. Again, if it's something where Minnesota says, all right, we're not going to let you run the football, Baker, you got to beat us. Now you got, potentially the second option here at $3,200. That also, honestly makes me have a little bit of interest in OBJ, who's coming back. He's only $5,800. He's the number one guy in a game. We saw him last game have 9 catches. So I think OBJ is a pretty interesting call at $5,800 as well.
Peoples-Jones, I'm staying away from. He's just not getting enough targets. They're throwing to what's his face, their third running back, Felton. He's catching more. Yeah. He's getting more targets and catches than Peoples-Jones. So they're rolling 3 tight ends. 1 week it's Njoku, then Harrison Bryant, and there's too many. They just want to run the ball too. Like yeah. I think one of my favorite things I want to do in GPPs every week, if I'm looking at the Browns offense, is playing both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, because I think they both get enough work rushing and passing to sustain that. And who the hell else is crazy enough to play both those guys in a lineup? So
I think that's a pretty interesting call, especially this week coming up again.
I want to do it every week. That was my best lineup. It was my best lineup last year when I did that. And like, I talk myself out of it, but I don't know. It makes sense to me.
That is very interesting, honestly. Let's jump over to tight end though. Not much to say here. Kelsey, $8,100. He's just a stud. Anytime you want to play him. He's 7, 8, and 11 targets, 2 straight games over 100 yards, 2 straight games, 7 catches, 3 touchdowns in 2 games. He's incredible, and he's been doing it for years now. Next is George Kittle at $5,900. I'm going to be playing George Kittle. Whether that's with Jimmy G is yet to be determined. We'll see about that. But James, where are you looking at tight end? It's always such a kind of a crazy guess, I would say, but there are some interesting plays, and I think, some decent upside plays that you can find down here.
I'm either playing Kelsey or Evan Ingram. So literally like the floor or the ceiling. Evan Ingram at 3,000, I think, is a fine play. This is only his second game back. He only caught 2 balls last week, but with Sterling Shepard, with Sterling Shepard getting banged up, Darius Slayton banged up, I think he's going to be more of an integral part of their offense going forward. So at 3,000, I think that's a value.
I like that call for sure. AK, what about you?
At 3,100, Pat Freiermuth, or however you pronounce his last name again. He's had 5 targets back-to-back weeks, and Big Ben can't throw the ball more than 18 yards down the field, so I feel that helps a tight end out.
Fair enough, and I'll give you the pump play of the week, which I'm guessing is going to be the popular pump play of the week. It's Tommy Tremble for the Carolina Panthers. Dan Arnold was just traded to the Jaguars. Tremble's the next tight end in line. He's only $2,500. It's that game against Dallas. I think that people might look to that. So, you know what? Why not? There's your way. You put your Niners stack in there with Tommy Tremble, and you'll be able to play Derrick Henry and anybody else that you want to put in that lineup.
There you go.
Defenses. Bills are most expensive, $4,300. Then the Titans at $3,900. It's so disappointing that the Titans are priced up to $3,900 because they're facing the Jets. But like DraftKings has to price it that way because it's like Zach Wilson is liable to throw 4 picks at any moment. So, AK, we'll go right to you. Any play on defense this week that you like more than something else?
Washington football team's been kind of fitting into my lineups. That D line is really good, and Matt Ryan's not that athletic. So kind of hoping that they have a bounce back week this week, but they're just how it's fitting in for me.
James, what about you?
I'm looking at the Lions. It pains me to say that, but at 2,200, they're playing Chicago. We don't know who's playing quarterback, but I don't know that it really matters. Their offense stinks. There's a good shot at turnovers and sacks, so I'm going to punt the defense again this week and probably go with the Lions in most, if not all, of my lineups.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Is Matt Nagy the first coach to get fired? Like he's just been brutal this year.
I don't know how he survives the season.
I don't need it. What'd you say, AK?
Unless Urban quits. Well, I mean, that wouldn't be getting fired if Urban just has a heart attack or something.
A fake one?
Coach K of the NFL.
Yeah.
Just passing out on the field. That's not funny. We don't wish ill upon anybody, but
no, sir.
No, sir. Yeah, defense. It's really. I'm gonna have to look kind of deeper into this to see if there's anything that is of interest. My thing is always just look for teams that give up a lot of pressure and teams that are going to throw the ball a lot and see if they do that because sacks lead to pressures lead to turnovers lead to points. So that's kind of how I look at it as far as defenses go. Before we get out of here, why don't we give our favorite stacks of the week if you have one, or just your final thoughts. James, we'll start with you.
I'm probably between Russell Wilson with DK and then like an Ayuk bring back, and then I also like Josh Allen, Diggs, and Brandon Cooks bring back. I'm probably gonna look hard at a couple of those, and then AK's Jalen Hurts with some Chiefs guys. I think there's some validity and some value in that too.
Brandon Cooks, 7, 14, and 11 targets in 3 games, 132, 78, 112 yards in 3 games, 5, 9, and 9 catches in the first 3 games. He is just getting every passing target there is right now for the Texans. So I like that call with Brandon Cooks. AK, what about you?
Sam Darnold and DJ Moore, I think, are going to have a really good week, and then it's just going to be rolling the dice on who you're going to bring it back with. I prefer Cooper just because of the price difference.
Are you going to put Robbie Anderson in there as a double stack, or are you going to stay away from that?
If anything, I'm going to do Terrence Marshall as a double stack to save more money. And
Gotcha.
Before you check yours, Justin, check the lineup I just sent you. It'll probably make you smile.
Let's see here. He just texted me.
It's a Jimmy G lineup, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Let's go. Dude, I'm telling you, you can get pretty nasty in here. Let's just put it this way. You got Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara at running back with
And
this Jimmy G stack.
Not too many people are going to have both of those guys.
Dude, I'm telling you, I don't know. I think I might end up doing it. And when I win the million, and you guys are going to be like, oh shit, I guess we should have listened to him and played our Jimmy G stacks. That would be something.
Probably. Well, if you play that
something.
lineup, you owe AK something, I think.
Yeah, he just
I'm not going to copy that lineup exactly. I got to change it up a little. I don't want to split
Yeah.
that milli with him.
Don't dupe me, bro.
Don't dupe me, bro. Don't dupe me. I think that, you guys are all making great points. I love the Kansas City stack. I don't know if it's going to be with Hurts or that. The thing that's interesting to me is that the highest point total, on the game is the Arizona and the Rams game. And we didn't really give that game too much of conversation. So that'll be something that I'll have to look into to see how highly owned they end up being. If they don't, it might be something I go to later in the week. But all right, fellas, I think this is good. A lot of good talks.
Good luck to everyone out there.
Good luck, everybody.
Good luck.
Find us on Twitter at Ballin Over. That's James Fitch at Fitchy24, AK Howe at Kenny Truelove, and I am Justin Dueppengiesser at JDiz1617. Make sure, again, you're telling us who is your favorite stack in the comments. Smash the like button, subscribe. Find us on the audio podcast as well. We appreciate everybody being here. Let's go win some money. Talk to you next time.